Under the soft, glowing lights of Harmony General Hospital, two tiny cries filled the night. Two baby girls entered the world at the very same moment. But their lives were about to follow very different paths. Melissa, bold and proud, lay in her private luxury room. She was married to a wealthy businessman and had everything money could buy. A tired smile crossed her face as they placed her newborn daughter in her arms. But the moment she saw the dark birthmark sprinkled across the baby's skin, her smile faded. Fear twisted her heart. If Maxwell sees her like this, she whispered in panic, he will think something is wrong with me. He will leave me. I know he will. As heavy rain battered the windows that night, a terrible idea began to grow inside her. Chaos ruled the hospital as nurses rushed around, trying to move patients from the flooded emergency units. And in that confusion, Melissa did something unthinkable, something that would haunt lives forever. She quietly swapped her baby with another, a healthy-looking newborn girl born to a poor woman whose husband had already abandoned her at the hospital gate. The next morning, Evelyn, the poor mother, woke up weak and aching. She reached for her baby and saw the dark patches on her daughter's skin. Her heart squeezed painfully, and tears welled up in her eyes. But she didn't scream. She didn't question. Instead, she held the tiny baby close, rocking her gently, and whispered through trembling lips. No matter what you look like, you are my child. You are my heart. And I will love you with everything I have. That night, under two very different skies, the two baby girls, Lizzy and Ruth, were laid gently in their cribs. Two moons watched over them, each casting a different fate. One girl would grow up surrounded by glitter and gold. The other would know only broken walls and whispered prayers. But deep inside, both girls carried a wound stitched into their hearts, one stitched with rejection, the other with abandonment. In a tiny, leaking one-room shack hidden behind the noisy, crowded streets of Lagos slum, Evelyn rocked Ruth to sleep every night. She sang soft lullabies, even while hunger twisted painfully in her own stomach. She did everything she could to care for Ruth, scrubbing floors, washing the fine clothes of wealthy women, braiding hair on street corners, and roasting plantain by the roadside just to scrape enough money together for Ruth's powdered milk. But no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. The hospital bills kept piling up. Ruth's skin needed expensive creams. The landlord always came knocking for rent. Evelyn was drowning, but she refused to let go. One desperate afternoon, when Ruth was just a toddler, Evelyn swallowed her pride. She wrapped Ruth in a threadbare cloth and walked to the house of the man who had once promised to love her, Jeremiah, Ruth's father. Jeremiah now lived with another woman, a plump trader dripping with gold jewelry and bright red lipstick. When Evelyn knocked on his door, clutching Ruth tight, she still carried a tiny hope that maybe, just maybe, he would show them kindness. Instead, Jeremiah laughed, a loud, cruel laugh that showed off his fake gold tooth. You again. He mocked, throwing an arm around his new woman. Little Ruth, with her big trusting eyes, reached out her tiny hands toward him. Jeremiah shoved her away like she was nothing more than a fly. You and that cursed child, get lost. I am done with you, he spat. Then the door slammed shut, loud and final. Evelyn sank to the dusty ground, holding Ruth so close it was like she wanted to pull her inside her own skin, anything to shield her from the hurt. Her tears soaked Ruth's thin little gown. But she didn't walk away. She didn't give up. Through every sickness, every heartbreak, every harsh word, Evelyn stayed. Because real love, the kind that holds you when the world turns its back, never leaves. Across town, behind tall iron gates and marble pillars, little Lizzy lived in a mansion that sparkled like a dream. But even in that palace, she was starving, not for food, but for something a child could want from a mother. Her father, Maxwell, worshipped his wife and daughter. He treated Melissa like a queen, showered her with gifts, praised her every word, sang her name like it was a holy hymn. Whatever Melissa asked for, she got. Well, almost everything. There was one line Maxwell wouldn't cross. He wouldn't let anyone else raise their daughter. No maids, he insisted. Our child deserves a mother's love. She needs to feel your hands, hear your voice. Until she's 10, it should be just you. Melissa smiled sweetly in reply. But inside, her heart burned and she wasn't happy at it. She never wanted to be a mother. Not really. But she had to do everything perfect to continue gaining Maxwell undeniable love. And Lizzy, this soft, curious, innocent child, was a burden she never asked for. A shadow from a night she wished she could erase. Whenever Lizzy crawled to her, arms outstretched for her to carry her like a mother could do to her child, Melissa would bark. Go away. If Lizzy clung to her dress while she chatted lazily on the phone, Melissa would shove her aside with her foot, like an annoying pet. The child would tumble across the cold, hard marble. And when Lizzy cried, Melissa would lean close, her voice a cruel whisper only Lizzy could hear. You're not really mine. I know it. And one day, you will too. At first, Lizzy cried harder. Reached out more. But slowly, that light in her dimmed. She stopped reaching. Stopped crying. Stopped hoping. Maxwell noticed that Melissa was not warm. So he gave Lizzy all his love when he was home. He carried her on his shoulders, ran through the house singing in a rough voice that made her laugh. He read her bedtime stories and bought her all the pretty dresses from the catalog. But Maxwell was a busy man. Work often took him far away. Melissa smiled sweetly when he was around. But the moment he left, the smile faded. Behind closed doors, Lizzy lived in silence. Her mother's coldness was like a wall she could never climb. Far from their big house, in a small, leaking room on the other side of the city, Evelyn and Ruth were also trying to survive. They had no marble floors, no fancy clothes, and no toys. But Ruth had something Lizzy didn't, a mother's love. Even when Evelyn was hungry, tired, or in pain, she held Ruth close. At night, by candlelight, she would braid Ruth's hair and tell her stories of brave girls who faced big monsters and won. One day, my little sunflower, she would whisper, the world will see how bright you shine. You are not your skin. You are your heart. And Ruth believed her. Lizzy, on the other hand, lived with golden chandeliers and shiny white bathrooms. But she never ran into her mother's arms. She never heard lullabies at night. She wore expensive dresses and danced in ballet shoes, but deep inside, she was aching. She learned to hide her pain. She started to believe she was a mistake. A burden. Someone unworthy of real love. When Ruth was 5, she stood barefoot by the side of the road, watching other children eat birthday cake she could not afford. She stayed quiet, hugging herself, wishing just for one bite. That same year, far across town, Lizzy sat alone in a huge living room. She pressed random keys on the grand piano, pretending to play songs. She looked around, hoping someone would clap for her. But her father, who always cheered the loudest, was away on another business trip. No one came. At 7, Ruth had learned to balance small buckets of water on her head to help Evelyn clean their little home. She walked carefully, trying not to spill a drop, proud to help her mother. At the same time, Lizzy kept trying to get her mother's attention. Melissa, too busy practicing her signature with glittering pens, would wave her away like a fly. Not now, Lizzy, she would say without even looking up. At 9, Ruth's classmates began to mock her. They called her spotty because of the birthmarks on her skin. Each word hurt, but Ruth pressed her lips together and stayed strong. Lizzy, on the other hand, wore shiny designer shoes that made the other girls jealous. They smiled to her face but whispered behind her back, calling her weird because of her quietness. 12 years passed like this. Lizzy, the healthy girl raised by Melissa, grew up cold and distant. Melissa had never truly loved her and made no effort to hide it. Even when Maxwell begged her to give Lizzy the best, Melissa insisted on sending her to a cheap private school, saying it was good enough. That same school was where Ruth went to, after Evelyn had scraped together every kobo she had, after months of praying and fasting, just to give Ruth a chance at a better life. Ruth's life at school was not easy. She wore old, faded uniforms, shoes with patches, and carried the weight of cruel words spoken by children who mocked her skin. At first, Lizzy watched from afar, her face calm and silent. But inside, every insult thrown at Ruth pulled at a part of her that remembered how it felt to be pushed away, to feel unwanted. One afternoon, when a group of students cornered Ruth by the school fence, laughing and pointing at her patches, Lizzy felt something snap inside her. Without thinking, she stepped forward, standing between Ruth and the bullies. Her voice was cool and firm as she said, "Back off. If you mess with her, you mess with me." The bullies looked at her, saw the neat clothes, the expensive bag, the fancy car that dropped her off each morning, and they backed away. From that day on, Ruth and Lizzy became inseparable. They walked together, laughed together, shared secrets and dreams. They had no idea they were once switched at birth. They only knew that, somehow, their hearts had found their way to each other. Ruth had once told Lizzy about their struggles. She said she had never celebrated her birthday, not even once. This year, she hoped things would be different, but deep down, she knew it might not happen. As their 12th birthday came closer, Lizzy's house was full of excitement. Workers decorated the mansion with balloons and ribbons. A big cake was brought in, musicians practiced their songs, and even a live band set up in the garden. Meanwhile, Ruth sat on her small, narrow bed. Her heart felt heavy. Her mother, Evelyn, gave her the same sad news once again. "We don't have enough money to celebrate, darling. Maybe next year," she said softly. It hurt, but Ruth gave a brave smile and nodded. That's when Lizzy made her a special offer. "Come to my party," Lizzy said, her eyes bright with happiness. "You're my best friend. I want you there." Ruth wasn't sure. Her mother was even more worried. But in the end, they decided to go. They wore their best clothes, even though they were simple and old. When Melissa saw Ruth and Evelyn walk into the grand mansion, her heart froze. She saw the dark patches on Ruth's skin. Immediately she had a flashback of when she delivered her and when she swapped her with Lizzy. She knew the truth in that moment. Ruth was the baby she had swapped. Melissa's face twisted in anger. She marched across the hall, grabbed Evelyn's arm roughly, and pushed both mother and daughter out of the door. "You don't belong here. Get out!" she shouted. The party guests gasped. Some dropped their drinks. The room fell into a heavy silence. Maxwell, shocked and angry, rushed over. They were invited by Lizzy. "Bring them back in." He spoke angrily. Slowly and uncomfortably, Ruth and Evelyn were brought back inside. But the warm party feeling was gone. Everyone was whispering and staring. Even the children and their parents who had come for the party were unsettled. Then, something terrible happened. Lizzy, hearing the loud voices from upstairs, rushed to see what was wrong. She ran too fast. Her foot slipped on a wet patch where someone had spilled a drink. She fell down the marble staircase. There was a loud, sickening sound when she hit the ground. Everyone screamed. Maxwell picked up Lizzy and rushed her to the hospital as fast as he could. Doctors worked quickly, trying everything to save her. They said Lizzy needed an urgent blood transfusion. Without thinking twice, Maxwell offered his own blood. But when the test results came back, everyone was shocked. Maxwell was not a match. Confused and scared, Maxwell demanded a DNA test. The doctors agreed and ran the test. When the results came back, they were even more shocking. Maxwell was not Lizzy's real father. Melissa was not her real mother either. When faced with the truth, Melissa broke down. She cried and sobbed in front of everyone. Between her tears, she confessed that 12 years ago, she had swapped the babies. Ruth, the girl with the birthmarks, was their real daughter, not Lizzy. They quickly called Evelyn to the hospital. When she saw the girl's situation, she broke down crying. Through her tears, Evelyn explained that Lizzy's real father had abandoned them at the hospital years ago and she has no idea where he lives now. Maxwell, desperate to save Lizzy's life, ordered a search for Evelyn's ex-husband. After some time, they found him living under a bridge, dirty and broken. When they begged him to help, he agreed, but only for a lot of money. He agreed to sign the adoption papers too. His blood matched Lizzie's, and the doctors were able to save her. But when Evelyn brought the idea of him coming back together be a father to Ruth, he only laughed coldly. "I sold my blood, not my soul, like you know Ruth is not even my child, Lizzie is," he said. "Leave me out of this." Then he walked away into the night, disappearing forever. Maxwell, heartbroken by everything that had happened, made a big decision right there in the hospital. "Both girls stay with me," he said firmly. "And Evelyn too. The mansion is big enough for all of us." Melissa could not believe it. She exploded with anger. "I refuse to live in the same house as Evelyn, or the two girls that either she gives me my child and take hers or take both," she snapped. Without another word, Melissa packed her bags, left the mansion, and within months she filed for a divorce. Maxwell did not beg Melissa to stay. Even though the mansion felt very empty at first without her, he stayed strong. Slowly, little by little, the mansion became a real home again, full of warmth, laughter, and love. Maxwell adopted Lizzie legally as his own daughter. He also changed Ruth's last name to his, treating both girls like the princesses they had always been. He poured out his love on them, trying to make up for all the years they had missed. Evelyn, who once had nothing and lived in sadness, finally found peace under Maxwell's roof. She was a loving mother to both girls. Ruth stayed close to her, always holding her hand, always calling her Mummy. Lizzie, surprisingly, didn't miss Melissa at all. She bonded quickly with Evelyn, her real mother, and found the kind of warmth she had never known before. Maxwell and Evelyn sometimes sat together in the evenings, talking quietly about the girls. But there was no spark between them, no romance, just respect and shared pain. One rainy afternoon, Ruth was flipping through an old photo album when she found a picture that stopped her breath. It showed Evelyn, pregnant at the hospital, wearing a bracelet on her wrist, the same one Melissa had torn from her years ago. On the bracelet were tiny beads, spelling out one name, Baby Lizzie. It was the real hospital tag. It was proof. The final, undeniable truth. Hands shaking, Ruth ran to Maxwell and showed him the picture. He looked at it for a moment, then smiled, calm and sure. "I already knew," he said softly. "You're my daughter." That smile. "It's mine." For the first time in her life, Ruth didn't feel lost. She didn't feel swapped. She felt chosen. And just like that, Ruth wasn't just someone's daughter. She was finally home. The end. Moral lessons. 1. A mother's love is not in blood, but in heart. Evelyn proved that love is not defined by DNA, but by sacrifice, patience, and presence. True motherhood is shown in actions, not just biology. 2. Secrets and lies always surface, no matter how long it takes. Melissa's hidden sin of swapping the babies came back to haunt her. Lies may bring short-term escape, but the truth always finds its way to light, often with painful consequences. 3. Wealth does not equal happiness, and poverty does not mean lovelessness. Though Lizzie grew up in luxury, she lacked affection. Ruth, despite growing up poor, was deeply loved. Families must remember that emotional support is more valuable than riches. 4. Every child deserves to be loved and protected, no matter their appearance. Ruth's skin condition made her a target of rejection and bullying, yet she turned out kind, brave, and full of love. No child should be judged or unloved for how they look. 5. Forgiveness heals, but accountability brings justice. While Evelyn forgave and moved forward, Maxwell chose to protect and do what was right. Families must learn to forgive, but also to confront wrongdoing and make things right for healing to begin. If you liked this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories. Do you think Maxwell should marry Evelyn to make their family complete? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.
I love you.